Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 27 of Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DeMaria. Thanks for tuning in. On the show this week, I am joined by master trumpet player, Mr. Joe Magnarelli. I am super excited to share this interview with you guys. I've been a huge fan of Joe's for quite some time, and he's one of those musicians where if you're involved in jazz, you know Joe Magnarelli, and you know what a fantastic player he is. And I say it in the interview, the podcast totally gave me an excuse to just reach out to him and ask him about his career in playing and music and all this great stuff. So check out the interview with him. Really excited to share it with you guys. So holy shit, the end of March. I hate this fucking month. Lousy March weather, as we say. It is by far the longest, shittiest month there is. I've always disliked it. And I'm just glad to see it go. So we're celebrating the beginning of April, the end of March with an episode with a great interviewee. I was saying, like, this show is just giving me carte blanche to just cold call musicians and be like, hey, want to be on my podcast? And I am really grateful that basically all of them have been very kind to me about it. So, thus an episode with Joe Magnarelli. Super excited for that. Let's get all the gobbledygook out of the way. Mr. Millennial's Revenge is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground, which is a grassroots, community-based organization dedicated to producing concerts, clinics, and jam sessions, all in the name of jazz in the great city of New Haven, Connecticut, the pizza capital of the world. Guys, I have news for you. Next month, sometime between April 1st and April 15th, 3 Sheets will be back in operation, opening its doors. I am calling on every member of the Jazz Underground to go and order food from 3 Sheets. They are our home away from home, and we miss them, and we owe it to them to support their business and keep them where they ought to be, right on Elm Street in New Haven, Connecticut. And I don't know the exact date they're opening, but check our Facebook page because I am just putting an APB out there. We are going to get 3 Sheets back on its feet. And because, hey, man, one hand washes the other, right? If 3 Sheets is back, our jam comes back, life comes back, and it'll be beautiful. So make sure you go there and keep an eye out on social media. The next Mind the Hang concert, I believe, I'm opening up my calendar. I believe it's April 8th, and it's going to feature the New Haven Jazz Underground All-Stars. We did a concert like this over the summer. This is a group consisting of our Patreon subscribers. So, in a time where we can't really give too much content to our loyal subscribers, this is kind of like something we do to pay back, basically. So the band will feature Anthony Pellegrini on baritone saxophone, Larry Davis on drums, Jake Falche on guitar, and David Shevin on bass. Typical, standards, the mainstream stuff. It's going to be great. 4 great musicians, broadcasted from the LA Center of Contemporary Art, fully funded by our Patreon subscribers, and they are 4 of them. So as a token of our gratitude, we're going to have them play. So this is the second time we bill it as the All-Stars. This is the second time we're doing this, and it'll be fun to keep doing and have All-Stars 3 and 4 and so on and so forth. So make sure you tune in. And that would require you to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/NHVJU, and that is where you can see our Mind the Hang concert stream. So make sure you like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram at NHV_Jazz Underground. And also, I believe I mentioned this last week's episode, the Black Rock Social House is open and operational, and congrats to my good buddy Mark and his team. Remarkable food, great atmosphere. We are producing a jazz brunch on Sundays from 11:30 to 2:30, featuring various groups, duo format for the most part. And you could check them every Sunday. be on the lookout. Here's the new announcement. A Wednesday Night Jazz series starting up mid-April. Either April, if I'm not mistaken, either April 14th or April 21st. We're kind of working with the dates. So keep an eye out for that. We are going to get that going. Weekly jazz, various different groups every week for your listening pleasure. And then also can't forget to mention the classic brunch at Alta Florian featuring yours truly. We have been going strong since September. I owe it to the crew there for keeping me employed when they certainly didn't have to. I really appreciate it. I'm usually there 11:30 to 2:30 p.m. For brunch, and it was kind of a solo act for a while. I think the duoism is coming back as well. So make sure you support these businesses as they offer great food and entertainment for everybody in the community. So, and then last but not least, don't forget to go on patreon.com and become a subscriber. We are crowdfunded. You know the spiel. Every week I say the same thing because I mean it. We are completely crowdfunded. We have no financial overlords. It is jazz for us, by us. That is our logo. Thank you to Alec Rice for creating that. For us, by us, the New Haven Jazz Underground. We are completely funded by small amounted donations from our everyday friends and family. So go to patreon.com for as low as $2 a month. You can help support these great music series we have going on. When the jam session comes back, man, we take care of each other, and that's what it's all about. So please do consider becoming a subscriber. And at patreon.com/NHVJU. Last but not least, I just wanted to mention my newest record, Indigo 7, dropped last Thursday. And I am really, really, really excited for everyone to hear it. It has 5 original compositions. It features Brian Sudo on guitar, Andrew Kasiba on Fender Rhodes, Andrew Zwart on electric bass, and Ryan Hom on drums. And I'm just really proud of this project. It's completely sci-fi themed. I'm not going to give too much because I want you to go to Bandcamp and read the liner notes that are included in the album. So go to nickdmaria.bandcamp.com and please consider purchasing a copy. I would greatly appreciate it because this Friday, April 2nd, is Bandcamp Fridays, where Bandcamp waives all of its fees, and all the money you send to purchase an item goes to the artists, and that's really great because Bandcamp's the best. I got 2 more albums coming out this year. I'm gonna have a total of 3, possibly 4, but I'm working on it. But yeah, I did a lot of writing during the pandemic, and now it is time to fucking get to business. So thank you to the good folks at Firehouse 12 for always being very hospitable to me. I've done almost all of my records there. Indigo 7 was done just last February, engineered by Greg DeCrosta, who is a guru, a master, Zen master of recording audio, music stuff. I couldn't do it without you, Greg. So thank you so much. It's kind of like a pseudo fusion album. It's got like a Filet de Kilimanjaro, maybe a Miles in the Sky kind of vibe. It's like distinctly that middle ground between jazz and fusion. Definitely an In a Silent Way kind of vibe to it. And like I said, all sci-fi themes. So please check it out. It would really make me feel special. And last but not least, please do subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. And if you do, please leave a review. It helps boost the presence of the podcast. It gets more listens, more likes, more eyeballs looking at it if you leave a review. So, I'd really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who has been checking out the episodes. I really, really appreciate you and all your words of encouragement. So now let's get to my interview with Joe. Joe came to, my musical world probably post-college. I'm sure I was just looking for modern trumpet players. I was really hungry for someone to look up to, during that time. Before I discovered Jeremy Pelt, I was really into Dave Douglas, Eddie Henderson. Joe Magnarelli was just one of those guys that kind of fell into my lap. and I've been a big fan of his. And man, what a sweet guy. Just an absolute sweet guy. Fantastic trumpet player. We talk a lot about his career, and I'm really grateful that he shared his time with me. I think in the show notes I'll put some of my favorite tracks because he really does have a lot. And he's been playing virtually with his wife. We talk about that on the podcast, in the interview. So make sure you pay attention for that stuff. Get all the details, damn it. But no, Joe's a great human being. I'm really happy to share this interview. So let's get to it. Please enjoy my interview with trumpeter Joe Magnarelli. Joining me now via Zoom on the podcast is trumpeter Joe Magnarelli. Joe, as my first Italian-American guest on the show, I'm really looking forward to this, man. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to have you on the show because I've been a huge fan of yours for so long, and I've seen you play at Smalls so many times, and I think once I said hi to you, probably when I was a bit younger, and I just for some reason never followed up. So I'm glad I got you on the show. Me too,
man. Me too.
So how you been? What have you been up to as of late? I see that you've been playing back at Smalls. Speaking of, pretty frequently.
A few times, a few gigs at Smalls, a few gigs around town here and there, but I mean, obviously since the pandemic hit, it's been very slow, very slow. I've been practicing, I'm trying to practice as much as possible, but gig wise it's pretty slow. Yeah.
Have you been hitting it seems like everybody's hitting the Arbin's book again, and the Schlossberg book, and all the classic technical studies and everything. It's like everyone had time to kind of go back really in the shed because there was no work. Were you doing stuff like that?
Oh yeah, I'm doing it right now. I mean, I'm my book is basically if I have a go-to book, it's Schlossberg, I guess, because I'm just trying to play hard, play strong and play some exercise to give my face a good workout, So yeah, I play a lot of Schlossberg. I practice a lot of Carmine, not a lot, but I have about 4 or 5 Carmine Caruso studies I do mostly every day, and I do play out of the Clark. But my Clark thing is the setting up drills, which is his first book. So I practice in that book sometimes. Yeah, good book. Yeah.
Are you someone who practices a lot every day, or are you a regular stringent routine guy, or does it fluctuate for you?
Well, I definitely, more days than not, I'm practicing 2.5 hours, I guess.
Yeah.
A not so good day would be 1 hour and 45, and then I also play. I practice piano almost every day too. I like to keep my piano chops, pretty sad. Keep on that sad level,
So yeah.
So I practice piano every day too. But yeah, I think I guess I'm a routine guy. I think my things out. I try to get everything organized in my head. So when I go to practice, I try to minimize the time,
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, but I want to kind of go back. You're originally from Syracuse, and
right.
Did I find this right? Your first teacher was Louis Mucci, who.
Well, one of my teachers, yeah,
okay.
One of my first, was Louis Mucci, who was he's a famous cat.
Yeah. So for anybody, we're gonna get real nerdy and trumpet heavy on this in this episode. I think Louis Mucci, he was on Miles Ahead and Porgy and Bess and Sketches of Spain, and was he at Berkeley? Is that where you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went 1 semester to Berkeley, and he was my teacher.
What was that like? Because I feel like a guy like him, I mean, you know, I'm fairly familiar with his work. Obviously, the Miles records. I believe he played lead trumpet on those records.
Right.
You know,
No, he didn't play. No, he didn't play
he
lead.
didn't play lead. Was it Ernie Royal then?
Bernie Glow played lead.
Bernie Glow, right. Thank you for correcting me. But Louis Mucci is on those records as well.
No, he's on. He's the section. Yeah. I mean, they all played lead. They all played lead, man. You know, I mean, Louis played lead too, but but I think on those records, Bernie Glow was the cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm gonna look it up as we're talking, because I always mix up a lot of those guys. I know they're on the record, and then I mess up which, you know, who is who. But I feel like a guy like that is cut from a particular cloth. Like that's like a certain kind of player, right? That, like a certain kind of mindset, certain generation. What was it like learning from a guy like Louis Mucci?
Well, like you said, he was from a different world, man. Even back then, you know, like this. I'm talking like this is 1980, 81 now.
Yeah.
And he was from a different world that, you know, I could relate to a little bit because I had the records, you know, that he was, you know, I mean, I was familiar with the records.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was probably in his early 70s, and all we really did was play duets.
Oh,
and
wow.
And he would correct me, you know, he would correct my, you know, he would basically try to correct my sound as much as possible. But he wasn't giving me like a lot of exercises. It was mostly just we would come in and we would read music, you know, and I think that was kind of like the way Berkeley was back then. Like when you first got into school, you went with like Lou Mucci or a real trumpet guy, and then as you progressed, either you would stay with them because you were a lead player, or you would go to a jazz guy. But I was only there for 1 month, one semester, so I never. But I was very lucky to study with Lou Mucci. Fantastic experience for me.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like, for, you know, again, for anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about one of these kind of like commercial players. You know, he played, you know, these guys that were playing, you know, I think he was a house musician for CBS. So like, you know, we're talking this like World War II era kind of cat, you know, and then, you know, his career spanned through, you know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. And, you know, and he's one of those people, like, you know, rightfully so. We talk about Miles and Gil Evans and their genius, you know, writing the albums, you know, Miles Ahead and Sketches of Spain. But you forget that there were like working guys in that orchestra, you know, Miles Ahead. What is it? Miles plus 19 or something, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite one. Miles plus 19. Yeah.
That was like the second Miles album I ever heard, actually. I think the first one was 7 Steps to Heaven, and then I heard Miles Ahead, and which are like really different if you think about it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I remember liking the fast songs on 7 Steps to Heaven. We're talking like I'm 16, you know, so I'm not impressed with like beautiful balladry, but I remember really liking Miles Ahead. Miles Ahead was one of like the first that I had bought. You know, but what I was getting at before was, you know, you got Miles and Gil, but then you've got these like, you know, regular working guys that are making up the orchestra, and Louis Mucci is one of these guys. So when I had discovered that you had studied with him, in a semester counts, like I totally get it. I feel like that's like I was saying, like a certain breed of musician, and you know, talk about like these behind the scenes kind of guys, like behind the scenes, but on the ground, you know, like obviously I would love to know what the studio was like the day they made Sketches of Spain, and someone like that, I would have been, we never would have gotten work done because I would have just been bugging him, you know, and it was probably just a job for him, and he probably didn't have much to say other than he was there.
Well, actually, that's probably it, man. I mean, you know, those cats were so busy back then. They were literally doing between 2 and 5 jingles or record dates a day. Think about that.
Right.
I mean, like when I was my busiest time in New York, you know, I had maybe 3 record dates a month. You know what I'm saying? They would, you know, I mean, they were doing, you know, religiously 2 and 3 to 5 a day. So yeah, he probably just, they probably just went in there, we had a little rehearsal, maybe the next day came in and did the date, and they probably did something else afterwards.
Right.
So yeah, sure. It was just another day's work probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Not like they probably did like a dog food commercial, like after they did Sketches of Spain or something. Yeah.
Exactly. You never know. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, why did you leave Berkeley to go? Did you just have the New York bug? You were like, nah, I want to get working. And was it something like that, or was it just circumstances?
It was circumstances. I was a different person back then. And
sure.
I was coming from a junior college. I transferred from a junior college where I was on the basketball team. And I did this kind of a stupid thing. I left the season halfway through the season, my sophomore year, and went to Berkeley. And so now I'm sitting in a dorm room with a very nice cat that I was roommates with, a guitar player, very, very nice cat. But, I was very narrow, a very straight ahead cat. I was a basketball player. I went to bed early. I worked out, I was, and, my first couple of days at Berkeley, I'm hanging out with my roommate, who I loved, actually. He was a great guy. But, like, he's sitting in his bed smoking a joint, playing guitar. And I'm just like, wow, this is a different world, But luckily, what happened was I found out about the Huntington Street Y. And I started going there, and they had like the best basketball games. They had really good games, mostly football players from Boston University and Boston College would hang out there and play. So I basically, instead of really diving into music when I was at Berkeley, which I should have been doing, I just kept my basketball growth going. And my whole life was just going to the Y. So when I left Berkeley, I don't know, I thought about going back the next year, but I'm like, nah, I just, I spent my whole time playing basketball. Why am I going to go back there? So I went to Fredonia State, and it turns out I tried. I went there. The coach knew who I was. My uncle was an athletic director there, and I got cut. I didn't make the last cut. Yeah, it was strange. Man. It was a strange time in my life, man. It was all my fault. It wasn't the coach's fault. It was all my fault. But so I'm just saying I can't even explain why I would leave Berkeley and leave a teacher like Lou Mucci, other than to say I had another love in my life. It was basketball. So I tried to, yeah.
But I mean, you could chalk that up as, we're different when we're younger. That's a youth thing.
Yeah.
But I think it worked out for the best, considering where we are right now.
Yeah, and actually Fredonia, when I went to Fredonia State after I got cut off the team, I found it was a music school. I wasn't a music major, but it was a music school. So I immediately started to, become friends with the guys who could really play. And, it was great. It was great to, it was cool. Yeah.
So you eventually get to New York. What was New York like? I mean, you got there in the 80s in
86. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what was New York like back in 86 when you showed up? Where were you hanging? Were there players you were seeking out? Was there somebody you were trying to follow? Because I mean, not to be like a cliche, but obviously there's no internet or anything. You can't email somebody. So I assume you got to go to a club and like find this guy, So what was it like, and who were you seeking out?
Well, when I first got to town, that first summer, I remember the Mets won the World Series that summer.
My parents were at that. They were at the pennant game. Yeah.
Yeah, 86. Yeah. So I just remember that whole year, like that whole, But anyways, when I came to town, it was a different world. First of all, as far as my own, what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a jazz trumpet player. So I came to town. I used to hear Dizzy Gillespie play. Wow. I heard Freddie Hubbard play many times. I played with Freddie Hubbard a couple of times. I did a record with Freddie Hubbard. I got to hear Tom Harrell play night after night sometimes, like at Bradley's, when he used to do his week runs at Bradley's, I would go to Bradley's and, basically sit there, 2 sets a night. So that's what I was doing. I used to go hear Art Farmer all the time because I knew him. I had played with him in Europe with Lionel Hampton. So I, he remembered me and all that. So I used to go around and see him and talk to him. So, it was a different world, man. There were giants out here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also on the other hand, I mean, I don't want to be like, the world was better back then or anything, but there was gigs, man. There was a lot of gigs. I mean, I used to work Latin gigs. There was a time when I was in two Latin bands, and I was working Latin gigs, I don't know, 3-4 nights a week, off nights too, off nights.
Sure.
And then, I got into, at a certain point, I got into club dates. I had the gig at the Rainbow Room for 6 months. I was a trumpet player, so that's 6 nights a week gig. I used to play at the Roseland Ballroom. Like, I used to be in one of those bands, and that was like Thursday through Sunday, and it was a 6-hour gig. You played half hour on, half hour off. So there was all kinds of stuff like that. Like now it's like, if a cat comes to town, it's like, can you get a gig at Smalls? Can you get a gig at Smoke? And the rest of it is like, I don't know what people do, because the industry has shrunk so much,
Right.
So yeah, when I came to town, there was a lot more opportunity just to make your rent, and of course, rents were a lot cheaper too. So yeah, it was much more of a friendly atmosphere as far as just coming to town and playing. Yeah,
I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't think the angle of saying, quote unquote, life was better back when or whatever. I think like musicians like myself, like I'm I'm in my late 30s, guys that what am I trying to say? I look up to musicians who were the sidemen of musicians who had become leaders around that time. I was talking to Jeremy Pelt a few weeks ago, right? And he had, he just released his book, and he has an interview with Larry Willis. And I call the guys of Larry Willis's generation, I call them like the second generation Blue Note guys, because they were the guys who were like, the young cats in the 60s and 70s. They were the sidemen. Right. Benny Maupin, George Cables, Eddie Henderson, Gary Bartz, those kind of guys. So in the 70s and 80s, those guys are now the leaders because they're a little bit older. They some of them have like the experience and the name recognition or whatever, and they have their own bands. So a lot of the musicians that I look up to were sidemen in those guys' bands. If you're following me. So
yeah, of course, yeah, sure.
So when I ask, and I understand, things are incredibly different than what they were. It's fascinating to hear what it was like, when you were, in your 20s and 30s and first starting out and, first getting onto the scene, because that's when, man, I was a kid, so it's a time that's fascinating. And to see how, things have changed, but kind of come back around, and how the generations interact with each other. So like, I get it, man. I understand 100%. Like, it's just, watch my jaw drop when I hear that you played 6 nights a week at one place, that's just, it's incredible, man. It's a completely incredible thing to hear about. And, feel free, if there's some lamentation in there, you can have it, because I want to hear the stories,
Well, I will say this though, like, definitely the industry has shrunk, obviously, that's not news. Yeah. But I will say that the jazz scene, hasn't really changed that much, other than, like you said, like I lived in a time when there were still masters walking the streets. I mean, there still are now, but very few are left.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're talking about Dizzy Gillespie. He's the father of bebop. He was a gigging musician when I came to town. He was playing gigs. Yeah. I used to see him walking down 7th Avenue, walking to Sweet Basil's with his horn over his back, just like I do now. I'm thinking like, that was Dizzy Gillespie. He's just a cat, man. Yeah. So I don't think that the music has changed that much, man. I think that the scene is still full of vibrant people that want to get better and grow and take the music further. I don't think that's changed at all. And I just think that the opportunities to just be a musician and support yourself through music, it's a little harder now than when I came to town, for many reasons, not just because of the gig, because of the cost of living, many different reasons that play into it,
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But I didn't really care though when I was young, because I just wanted to play. I wanted to just play, man.
Sure.
So we, I was basically doing, if there was a gig, a steady gig, that paid, somewhere between $40 and $70 and was an off night, I was probably on the gig. You know what I mean? I probably had one of those gigs all the time. You know what I mean? Like, that was my thing. I didn't care about money. I just wanted to play. I wanted to learn songs, And then when Smalls opened up, everything kind of became legitimate after that. You know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden you had a place to go. You knew what the money was going to be. It was never a question, Before that, it was just like little bars all over town, for a guy like me.
Sure, sure.
I wasn't, I wasn't at the time, like, even like Mike Mossman or, like cats in like Winton, those cats were already doing like high profile gigs. I just moved to town. I was doing a bar called the S&T bar on the east side. And I was playing another club called Caliban's in Manhattan. And, Upper East Side, actually. And the S&T bar was Lower East Side. And, like, even I'm trying to think. And then before that, I had a steady night at Augie's on Wednesday nights. So, but that was a tip gig, completely tip gig, So when Smalls opened up, it was almost like, oh, okay, wow, man, there's actually a place now where you go, you're going to make $100, and and it was like a step up for us,
Yeah, graduation, in a way.
Yeah, like a validation.
Yeah. Were you one of those? Were you a player who just like took any job? If a job came your way, you took it? Like, were you just hungry to work and keep playing, keep the horn to your face? So
No, I wasn't, because first of all, I didn't have a lot of confidence in my trumpet playing. So even though I had done a lot of show work before I moved to New York, playing first trumpet, actually.
Oh, wow.
When I got to New York, I just didn't have the confidence to take that. So I was getting calls, because I played Misbehaving once for about 38 weeks.
Wow.
And when I came to New York, I started doing the rehearsals. And the conductor wanted to put me right in on Broadway and stuff. So that's one example where I kind of just backed off and said, I don't think I'm ready for that, And then, but on the other hand, if I had a club date that paid $300, a wedding that was an easy gig, and then Jack McDuff had a gig, last second gig that paid $75, I would get somebody to go do the wedding for me. I'd go play a $75 gig with Jack McDuff.
I feel like I would have done the same thing. I want to talk about McDuff, but I've been writing down like all the names you keep saying. I want to write it down. First off, I love the image of walking into a club or a bar and seeing Dizzy just like walking in like anybody else. Like that's just nuts. Like, I was a little boy when he died, so I didn't discover him until well later. Few years after he had passed. And to be honest with you, he was the, when my band teacher had given me like a Dizzy CD, I was like, oh, I've seen this guy on the Muppet Show. Like that was my experience. And he's on an episode, and now that the Muppet Show is on Disney Plus, I urge everybody to go check out that episode, because he plays like St. Louis Blues and it's killing. But I want to ask you about Freddie, because you brought up Hub. So like, what was that like, catching him every night? Who was in his band? I'm sure he was playing the Freddie Hubbard hits of the time, but what was that like? And did you talk to him at all?
Well, yeah. Well, the first time I heard him was in 1981 in Syracuse, before I moved to New York, and really before I got into jazz. This is right after Berkeley, actually.
Okay.
And that was the greatest trumpet playing I ever heard in my life, man. In fact, I remember he was playing, and I didn't really know what a double C was at the time, to be honest, man. But he was playing Up Jump Spring,
sure,
on flugelhorn. And I remember it was just so great, man, when he played. I remember after the tune, he said, "Man, you ain't supposed to play a double C on flugelhorn, man. How did I do that like that?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of night he had. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And then I saw him when I moved to New York. Basically, the first club that I used to see him at was Fat Tuesdays on 3rd Avenue, and that club wasn't long for being open, but I think probably it was open for like 86 when I got there, to about 92, 93. But anyways, I used to see Freddie Hubbard in there a lot. I used to see Dizzy in there a lot.
Wow.
And, but yeah, Freddie, like, you know, Freddie, it would be not be totally normal for Freddie to show up an hour late and walk. There was only one entrance to get in, so you had to walk in the front door and then walk through the whole crowd to get to the dressing rooms.
Oh wow.
So some nights, so there were a couple of nights when he walked in. He's like really like an hour late, man. Everybody just sitting there. He's got a skull on his face, a real skull, man. He just walks right to the dressing room, man. Like don't talk to me, like kind of thing, you know. Yeah, and sure. But man, I tell you, when he came out and played, man, it was worth the wait, man. That's for sure.
I bet.
And then in 1990, Toshiko Akiyoshi, which I just joined her band at the time, had a record date for back then still called Columbia Records, at Live at Carnegie Hall, featuring Freddie Hubbard.
Oh wow.
So we made a rehearsal, and you know, Frank West was on it, and Jerry Dodgen, and you know, it's a lot of good cats, man. And Greg Gisbert, John Eckert, and you know, Peter Washington played bass. And so we did this gig at Carnegie Hall, and Freddie played his ass off, man. I mean, I wish I would have had a tape of the rehearsal the day before, man. He came in a little drunk for sure, and vibing hard, man. Because you know, we basically, the whole band was white except for Frank and Peter. So he was, you know, he just kind of talked to them and didn't really talk to too many other people. But you know, at the same time, he wasn't, you know, I wouldn't say he was rude. He just, you know, that was his vibe. You know?
Yeah.
You know, but what he played, man, that day at the rehearsal, and played mostly flugelhorn, was just, you know, I still remember just looking at him, going like, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you know. Yeah. And then there was one other time. I don't know if you ever heard of Sonny Costanza.
I think I want to say yes.
Because he's from New Haven, and he was a trombone player in Clark Terry's big band.
Yeah.
And he used to have this series at Quinnipiac College. Once a month, he would have a concert. He was the leader of the band. He didn't really play much. He played a couple too, but he was a good trombone player, man. He played real nice. He wasn't like a chop guy. He was a real, you know. Anyways, so one month it was, you know, and he had Paquito, all these people, Clark Terry, blah, you know. So it was a great experience. And I hadn't been in the Vanguard band yet. I hadn't done that yet. So I was driving up to Connecticut on Monday nights playing this band. So anyways, one week, you know, he had Freddie Hubbard 1 month. I mean, and he asked me, he said, Joe, you want to go pick up Freddie? So I said, yeah, man. So I brought him from the hotel to New York, from New York all the way to Quinnipiac in my car. Now, there's a lot of things I'm not going to tell you because it would make Freddie look, you know, like it would give him, you know, you wouldn't look in the right light. But let me just say it. Let me just say it was one of the best experiences of my life. It just like talking to somebody about music. Because the first thing that I got right away when he walked in the car, because first of all, I went up to the room first and I hung out with him up in his room. It's a long story. And then then eventually he comes down to the car and we make it to the gig. And when he got in the car, in 5 minutes, the first thing I thought was, wow, this guy is really smart. Like, he's really a smart person, man. Like, you know, I got that right away.
Yeah.
And, you know, basically he was doing his thing all the way up to the gig, man. He was getting, you know, he was cooking, man. So he was just talking, man. He was talking like just, you know. And then on the way home, he don't like to smoke weed, I guess, before the gig. So on the way home, we smoked a joint. And then we drove back to New York, and he talked the whole subject changed, man. He went into a whole nother tip about some weed, man.
Wow.
So long story short, it was a great experience to hang out with him that day. I felt like, you know, that was a real gift from God to have, you know, just spend time with a cat like that, because he was very elusive. I mean, you know, and then, you know, a little funny footnote to the whole thing is that about 5 to 7 years later, I was dating a girl who I had met up at Showman's Cafe. She's a waitress up at Showman's, and she loved the trumpet. She always wanted to be a trumpet player. So I told her Freddie was playing at the Iridium, and I told her, you got to go see Freddie Hubbard, man. You got to go hear Freddie Hubbard. You know, and he wasn't really playing that great, but still, for her, it would have been, you know.
Yeah.
So Freddie sees this girl and totally hits on her right away. So then we had another connection that he didn't even know about. And like he was calling her up all the time, and she would record his messages and then play them for him. It was funny, man. But it was all good, man.
Yeah,
Nothing
sure.
bad. It was
of course.
all good. But so that was kind of my experience with Freddie. You know, not so much, you know, face to face, just a couple times. You know.
It's funny how so many musicians have these great stories, these almost like life-defining stories that involve them giving another and usually more established cat a ride to a gig.
Yeah, sure.
So I had picked
like the mafia.
Exactly. I had picked up. I was putting on a show and was showcasing Peter Bernstein. So I picked him up from the train station, and it wasn't a long ride, but for like 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes, I got to just be in the car with him. And it was the same thing. It was like, I was a lot, this is like 10 years ago now. So I was like, mid 20-year-old kid, like kind of acting like I was in a candy store. Cause he's just like, talking about, I remember saying like, what kind of music do you like? And then immediately thinking in my head, well, that was like the stupidest question I could ask him, right? And I'll never forget, man. He was so nice about it. He goes, I just love Stax records, man. I always go back to Stax. And I was like, that's fantastic. I'm just friends of mine. I had booked George Coleman with for the New Haven Jazz Festival one year, and the band that he was going to be featured in was younger cats, and they offered to drive George to the gig, so from New York to New Haven, and they said that like that was half the performance for them. Just this legend, this living legend, is trapped in the car with us on I-95. There's nowhere to go, so I love hearing those stories because I feel like a lot of people have them and they're always amazing. And you were saying like you knew he was smart. I often reflect about like the fact that if you listen to the music that these musicians made, like they had to have been smart. They had to have been bright and open-minded, because like, let's talk about Freddie, for instance. You hear him on a tune like The Egg. Herbie Hancock's The Egg, this like really, out like avant-garde, creative, like different kind of tune. Sure. Yeah. And it's like, you have to be smart to be able to like, I remember the first time I heard that, I was just like, what? And you have to, there is genius back there. And I have no doubt that, Hub was brilliant, just like many of his peers.
I totally agree with you, man. It takes a degree of a high degree of intelligence just to be able to master an instrument like that.
Yeah.
To the degree that he mastered the trumpet at. I mean, forget about he blew out his chops or whatever happened his last 15 years of his life, but before that he was really like LeBron James or Dr. J or somebody. He was the cat, man. And whatever happened, but not many people can say that they got that far in life in any walk of life. He really made it to the top of his profession, man, and deservedly Absolutely. So. He did it by playing the trumpet, man. So I feel very lucky that I was able to be around a guy like that a little bit, just a little bit. I mean, I went to a lot of his gigs. I heard him play I probably heard Freddie Hubbard play live with good chops, with really smoking chops, probably 30 to 40 times.
That's nuts. Yeah, I missed one chance. I missed one chance to see him. I was in college. It was still kind of before everyone had cell phones phase. Nobody was texting. My friends were going to, I think it was the Iridium, to catch him. They couldn't find me. I was like in class or practicing or something. They left without me. When they got back, I was like, I wouldn't speak to them for like a week. I was so mad, the audacity, and, but yeah, I, never got to see him live. Unfortunately, I kind of kicked myself, but I made it a point to see as many, of the legends as I could. I remember I got to meet Horace Silver at it was a Lee Morgan tribute gig that Eddie Henderson was playing. Lonnie Plaxico was on the gig. Benny Maupin was on the gig. I can't remember. And I got to Eddie and Benny let me sit with them on the break and just hang out and talk. And I was smiling ear to ear, and Horst Silver had come in, and he was getting pretty frail at that time. He was in a wheelchair, and he didn't look too good, but he was so nice. And I never got to see him play, but man, at least I got to like look the man in the eye, and I felt like that that matters for sure.
Yeah, sure.
So let's talk about your playing, because I say this with the utmost respect, but to me, you are today's Kenny Dorham. Like, I hear so much of Kenny's playing.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Like, I'm not trying to butter you up. I'm really serious. Like, anytime I've ever said, talked about you, especially another trumpet player who might not have heard of you, I would always say, man, he sounds like Kenny. Like, if you want someone, close, like that's who you would be, who I recommend.
Thank you very much.
He's got to be one of your guys. Like, he's got to be like in the top 3 for you, right? Because does he influence your playing? I mean, I know as a trumpet player, that's something. If somebody said that to me, I would kiss them on the lips. Like, is he one of your main guys? Like, and if so, what about Kenny's playing?
Well, I would say that before I heard Max Roach plays for Bird, which is Kenny Dorham and Hank Mobley with no chords, and George Morrow. I didn't even know what I wanted to do in life, to be honest, man. I was a pretty good trumpet player, and I did things, but when I heard that record, and I heard the way Kenny Dorham played on that record, I said, okay, that's what I want in life. That's it, Okay, but so at that time, my teacher who turned me on to Kenny Dorham played just like him. His name was Salamico. He lived in Utica, New York. And he was a bad cat, man. And he had really digested a lot of Miles and Kenny Dorham, because he had heard him play live. He had heard those guys many times.
Yeah.
So that was my first kind of, Kenny Dorham thing, where I learned 3 or 4 of his records. So but I think the thing that really kind of connects me with him is that I'm really into Bird too. Okay. And he was really into Bird.
Yeah.
And if his phrasing is a lot like Bird. So the fact that I checked out Kenny Dorham first and kind of fell in love with the sound, and now I'm copying Bird, it's kind of like the same, it kind of kept me on that same kind of thing, Yeah. So I think that kind of explains how I may resemble him a little bit in my playing, Yeah. But I will say lately I've been listening to a lot of Bud Powell, and probably Kenny Dorham got a lot of his information from Bud Powell too, I would say, because there's a lot of, especially the tritone substitution, man. Kenny and Bud Powell do a lot of the same kind of things in that sound.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I've been, with all this time off, I've been getting into a lot of Bud Powell, So.
Yeah. Yeah. Miles was always my main guy. And then I knew who Kenny Dorham was, when I got to college. Like, I knew he was the guy that wrote Blue Bossa. I knew that solo particularly. But the jazz instructor at my college was like, no, you're going to learn all Kenny Dorham. And he had me transcribe like all of page 1, all of Una Mas. And that's where like my love of him came in. I've always loved Joe Henderson. Like, Joe Henderson's my favorite saxophonist. And those albums they did together are just, they're just amazing. They're just amazing. And same with the pandemic. Now I've been able to, go back and just like re-listen to all of them over and over and over again. And it's funny that you brought up that Max Roach record. I remember when I first heard that, I was afraid of that record, and I didn't want to listen to it because I was incredibly intimidated by the amount of harmonic language you could hear, and there was no chord player. Just in Kenny Dorham's playing. Kenny Dorham's like, I always tell younger players, if you want to play a good turnaround lick, just cop Kenny Dorham, And man, it was just the trumpet, the bass, and the drums. There's no piano. And I think that might've been the first time, like, I truly like heard the changes of a tune without like, the harmonic, structure supporting it. And I was just like, so intimidated by that record because it was so good, because Kenny Dorham's playing is just so amazing.
Amazing.
You know, and so it took me a while to get back to it because I was just like afraid of it.
But I'll tell you what, man, I think that Una Mas record is some of his best playing too, man.
Yeah. I really
all
like
the records are good. Page One, but Una Mas is really, that's really a great record, man.
Yeah.
All through and through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm glad that we're agreeing here because I think that you have the Joe Magnarelli sound. Believe me, I really do.
Oh, thank you.
I just hear those influences strongly, strongly in your plan. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, you're admitting it, so I don't feel so bad. You always when you. Go ahead.
I was going to say when I was growing up in Syracuse. I mean, when I was growing up, really, my growing up in Syracuse musically was between the ages of 22 and 25. That's when I was in Syracuse playing music. And but there was all the hit jazz musicians like Joe Romano, J.R. Montrose, my teacher Sal Amico, Don Menza, Nick Brignola, all these cats. They all loved Kenny Dorham, man. That was their cat. That was their trumpet player. So of course I was like, when I heard that record, I'm like, oh, I understand why now. And boom, that was it. It was totally clear to me what to do.
Yeah.
I
was going to say something about. No, it's okay. Just the particularly the albums with Johan, those early '60s albums are, I love In and Out. Yeah, Our Thing, In and Out. Andrew Hill's Point of Departure. Just incredible playing from Kenny, and it's funny.
And different too.
Yeah, definitely different. Yeah. Original, because at the time. Because if you stack him up against the other players of the time, he really does stand out. You can hear, if we're talking like early '60s, you hear a lot of like Booker Little and Donald Byrd in hubs playing. You've got Lee's playing, which is got the connection to Clifford Brown and Dizzy, and then you got Miles. But man, like Kenny was really doing something different, and it's so funny that people say, "Oh, most underrated trumpet player ever," but it's like. He's got quite a fan club now, and it and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, still not though. He's still not. I mean, well, in New York, he's gone down a little bit. Like when I first came to New York, he was big. Like as far as like cats trying to. Now it seems like most people are into copying Freddie Hubbard or Wynton, I guess.
Yeah.
But it'll come around again.
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to your own approach, what are some of the things you try to hit, when you're shedding and transferring from the shed to the bandstand? What are some of the are you like some players are like pattern players and they love memorizing patterns. Other guys love melodies and stuff. What do you try to mold the Joe Magnarelli sound around? Is there anything in particular?
Well, I guess, I definitely practice patterns and a lot of songs. But I guess my basic thing that I do after like trumpet exercises would be, playing along with Charlie Parker or Coltrane or Sonny Rollins or Louis Armstrong. I've acquired a lot of, I've memorized probably, I don't want to talk out, but like at this moment, if I had to, if enough money was on the table, I could probably rip about 30 solos, by memory of different players. And so I rely on that for practicing. I rely on whatever, like some, like I told you right now, I've been studying a lot of Bud Powell, so I got 3 or 4 Bud Powell solos that I can play. So I'll practice those, and the next day if I don't have a gig again, I'll maybe take another guy that I've checked out and play his solos for a while. And that's a good stepping stone to the rest of the day for me. Because after I get my time together and I feel like I'm, I can play things in time and I can, play other things that are technically difficult, then I can start to do my own thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that pretty much comes from basically, the piano and listen, just getting things from the piano, and just trying to work them out, Yeah.
You were talking about the piano. Where did that come about? Was that like your parents made you take lessons? You always just had it?
No,
Or
they never made me take lessons.
wow.
They bought one when I was about 12 years old, and my father somehow, he wasn't a musician, but he was a kind of a comedian actor kind of thing. Yeah, he used to do a lot of shows.
Wow.
But his best friend was a concert pianist. So my dad had learned, I guess he showed him some shit. He had learned triads and minor triads. And so like 12 years old, he showed me minor and major triads. And I was taking guitar lessons already. So I knew the one note, and I could read one note at a time. And then my another friend of his used to have a music store. So he used to bring home these fake books, which I still have. They're right over there. Oh, wow. And so I used to when I was 12, 13 years old, I started just reading out of these fake books and learning tunes.
Yeah.
And I've been playing. I've only taken like 3 piano lessons my whole life. But having said that, I've been playing with the greatest piano players in the world for years. So I'm always watching them. I'm always asking them things.
Yeah.
Watching their left hand, when I was playing with Harry Connick Jr. for 4 years, I just watched his left hand. I used to watch all the shit he did. I could never do what he did, but you get the insight of how real heavy piano players really, approach the music.
Yeah, you make the connection.
You make the connection.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Like, because I barely played. I play the piano for my students at school, but we're talking like the basic of the most basic of the most basic piano playing. Like, I could play 1, 4, 5 progressions like pretty well, and that's about it.
That's good. Though. It's good.
But being able to make the connection, from the players, fingers to the notes to your brain is what you're talking about. And yeah, that's super important.
Yeah, I think especially like if you got a gig coming up, I think for me it's very important to play the whole gig on piano before I leave the house. Sometimes, wow. If it's a real important gig, so I try to get as much information about the songs that I'm going to play as possible, and then I might do a lot of shedding in my head too before the gig too. Just keep running the stuff over my head. That's pretty much the way I do things. I guess the way I approach it.
Yeah.
But I do practice patterns. I practice patterns. I practice solos. I do all that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the mental aspect. I'm sure one of my professors in school is Andrew Beals, the great saxophonist, and he used to yell at us. You should be thinking about these 2-5-1s walking from here to the dorm and back. And when you're in the bathroom, he's like, when you're taking a pee, you better be thinking 2-5 to D flat, 2-5 to A flat. And when we were kids, we were like, man, this guy is psycho. But I now know what he means. Like that mental preparation is just so important. It allows you to it's like you're trying to assimilate the instrument and the conceptual thinking into one, so you're not bogged down. It's all one streamlined thing, and that only comes with repetition and memorizing and always thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
No,
and I read Miles Davis's book, or I don't know if it was in his book or it was some kind of written thing.
Sure.
And he was talking about he's just trying to when he plays, he's just trying to play the music that's going on in his head.
Yeah.
And it took me a few years, man. But one day I woke up and I thought about that. I'm going like, you know what, man? That's what that means. He's practicing in his head all day long, man. It wasn't some deep thing, man. Just like me, yeah, he's going over the stuff in his head, man, before he goes plays. And so that I started to take that serious, a while back, and that kind of, for me, that kind of connects all the trumpet practicing and the piano practicing. It kind of connects it because you polish it all. You can polish it all up in your brain. Sure. And another thing that, older musicians used to tell me all the time, which finally rang true, I finally realized what they were saying, was that, even though my horn is, but the horn, the bell of your horn just represents what's going on up here.
Yeah.
Whatever comes out the bell is just a representation of what's up here. So that's, it finally dawned on me, like, oh yeah, motherfucker, just started thinking about this stuff, man, and trying to hear it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I was always told it's a microphone. The horn's just a microphone for you. And that was always kind of profound, because you kind of think, I think when you're like young, when you're younger, it's you and the trumpet. And then as you really start figuring it out, it becomes you and the trumpet, but together. You're not separate entities. You're trying to become one, so that it's all one. Like I was saying before, like a whole streamlined thing.
Yeah, totally.
Also, like you've made a lot of really great records. There's always like different bands on them and everything. Do you have anything particular that you look for in a rhythm, like from horn player to horn player? What do you look for in the rhythm section when you're picking a band to back you up? Is there anything that you look for particularly?
Well, first of all, I should clarify that the records you're talking about, like my leader records, they're all done, except for my strings record, they're all done for a company. So a lot of times the company has to say who's on the record.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that, it's different than I'm not just making records and, paying for them myself. I'm, somebody else is paying for them. So a lot of times the producer will call. I would say out of the 16 records I did, 15, 16 records, probably 11 of them bands have been assigned to me. But hey, man, I assigned me Kenny Washington and Peter Washington any day, man.
Right.
I mean, I'm so lucky to have played with Kenny Washington and Peter Washington on records, man. I can't even, I don't know how much that would have cost me in life if I had to pay for that. You know what I mean? So with that being said, but what do I look for? I mean, with a drummer, it's basically just look for good time, man. Somebody who has good time that I can relax and, not have to rush or pull or, try to pull it along if it's dragging. That's the main thing. And then, it's basically just personality and style. It's just like, are they playing the same style as me? And hopefully if you're making a record with someone, you've played with them, at least a bunch before the record. So, you can hear what you're doing,
Yeah.
And bass the same way, I guess. It just bass is more like, I hear bass a certain way in a band, in a quintet or quartet. I hear it a certain way. So I guess, I would be listening for that, Luckily, I live in New York where all these kind of things, there's multiple people that do these things, man. Like you have a choice, so it's really lucky in that way.
It almost makes it hard, I bet, to choose if you have your,
Yeah, when you're younger and you don't know who to play, you don't know really who to play with yet. Yeah, it's like, now I'm kind of, I kind of got my cats. There's probably 5 or 6 on every instrument, but those are the cats I usually play with.
When was your when was your first gig as a leader? Do you remember, or was it a gradual thing, or were you like, okay, now I'm going to start booking my own gigs? Was definitive, or it just kind of happened?
It just but I was still in Syracuse. I was.
Oh wow.
I was. I graduated college and I cleaned 3 bars for 2 years before I moved to New York, and one of the bars had a back room. And I asked the owner if I could bring in a band, and he said, sure. And it became a big hit. We did Sunday nights for 2 years.
Wow.
So I was, that was my experience, my first experience of leading a band. And I took it serious, man. I wrote out a lot of music. We took it serious. And so when I came to New York, it wasn't like a big leap for me to try to get my own gigs. You know what I mean? Because I had been leading a gig every week for a couple of years. So I pretty much came to New York, and probably 2 years after I had been here, I started to lead my own gigs.
Wow. That's interesting to hear. I feel like being a band leader is the last skill set a jazz musician learns. And some musicians, not even to their own fault, kind of never learn how to do it because it's such a unique situation to be put in. When I was saying to you before, when I got out of school, the recession had like slammed.
2007,
2008. So like we're talking like all the bars are starting to close and there's no jobs and all this stuff. So whenever I could get a gig, it was because I was leading. Like the economic situation was so bad that a rhythm section wasn't going to hire a horn player because the money, because of the money, basically. So all the gigs I got were my own, and I kind of had to, trial by fire, learn how to be a band leader right from the get go, and it was not something I was expecting to do, and and luckily I learned from my mistakes, and because I learned like those first 2 years, like 08 to 10, man. That was like trial by error. I was learning how to like run bands and how to book gigs and how to like schmooze the venue owners and conduct myself, properly. Man, it was tough. And I wish I had learned a little bit more about that stuff, but hindsight is what it is. But
well, you did learn. You're learning. The only way you can learn is by doing it. That's how you learn. You're perfect, man. You're good.
Yeah. So, we're wrapping up here, and you've still been playing at Smalls. It's a treat that I see your name on, I can't say the marquee, I guess, but the calendar so often. And it's been nice that, during COVID and everything, you've still been able to like, work there, and it's good to see you, playing and everything.
Yeah, I'm very lucky for Smalls. I was one of the original cats, man. Along with Spike, of course, and Grant Stewart and those cats, Roy Hargrove, Eric Lewis. And, I used to play at Smalls 3-4 nights a week when literally the only people there were high school kids drinking beer, their own, brought their own beer and smoking cigarettes. That's the only reason why they were there. You know what I mean? They were, so I was there. So I don't know, it's just kind of a karma thing, man. Like Smalls has always been my home court. So, it's just kind of a, you know what I mean? I'm just drawn to that club. You know what I mean? So I've been there. So I've been just, just so loyal. It's been loyal and two different, loyal to me. I've been loyal to that. So it just kind of works out. And I think that's important as a jazz musician. You got to find your home court.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have a home court where they know they can go and, it's friendly and they can just go play. If they want to go sit in, they can go sit in,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I can't tell you how many times I watched the sunrise from the train heading back to New Haven after spending all night there.
Yeah, sure. That's a great feeling, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right? Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I went down all the time when I was younger. I mean, all the time. I've caught, so many shows, and it's become like a mecca, and I'm glad to hear you say that, like, it's important to you, and of course it is, but it's kind of like the jazz. Yeah. It's like a jazz holy spot. It's almost like there's a pilgrimage, I feel like, your first trip to Smalls is the beginning of the path, the beginning of your way through this music. And I'm glad, and I know times have been tough, but I'm glad to see that it's still standing, man. Like, it's still like this fucking pandemic couldn't kill it. Like, it's just too powerful of an energy, So,
well, the leader, Spike Wilner, is that you're talking about him now.
Yeah. No, I know. It's like one and the same.
Well, not only is he a, strong human being and very intelligent, and he's a he sets out to do what he says he's going to do. But having said all that, he loves the music, man. He loves the music. And that's what you need, man. That's what you need. That's why that club it's going to be hard to move that club anywhere. That's not going anywhere.
Right.
As long as he feels that way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Magnarelli, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon and having you on the show. And
thank you, man.
Yeah. And man, I'm telling you, I can't wait for everyone to be vaccinated and we can go down and hang out, and I'll let you know when I'm in town, and we'll have a hug.
Yeah, man. It's very nice to meet you and talk to you, man. It's been such a nice cat, man.
Oh, thanks so much. But no, do you have any, before we go, it's joemagnarelli.com. Is that the website, I believe?
Yeah, I have a website. Yeah.
So everybody check out joemagnarelli.com. And,
and also, can I just say,
go ahead.
Just say, you probably know, and I'm sure most people know, my wife is a very fantastic organ player, one of the best.
Yes, how could I forget?
She started this thing we've been doing once a month. The last Thursday of the month, it's the Brooklyn Music Company. Just some little name we put on it, and we live stream from our living room.
That's right. That's right. I totally forgot. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, so I just if anybody's interested, I guess look up on her or my website. It'll be the next one will be listed.
What's the name of it again?
Well, we were calling it the Brooklyn Music Company.
Okay.
We live in South Brooklyn. Actually, no, it's called the South Brooklyn Music Company. Excuse me.
South Brooklyn Music Company. Yeah, I know I caught a performance kind of recently. So I probably caught last month's performance then because I remember seeing it. And I think, that makes sense because I think I was like, I got to reach out to Joe Magnarelli, get him on the show. So cool. South Brooklyn Music Company.
Yeah.
And check for you playing at Smalls. Do you have you don't have any new recordings out? I feel like
there's a new recording coming out on Cellar Jazz Records, which I released my last record, which was tribute to Tad Dameron. I have a live record coming out with Gary Simoleon.
Oh, wonderful.
It's called 44.
44?
Yeah.
Excellent. When does that drop? Do you have a date yet?
I think it dropped, actually.
Okay. Awesome. So everyone
know more about it.
Everyone check iTunes. 44 by Joe Magnarelli. Okay. Joe, thank you so very, very much, man. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Nick, thank you very much, man.
All right, Thanks, man. We'll catch you. Take care.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Joe. What a great guy. I wish I could talk to him for so many more hours about all kinds of stuff. But, that was really great. And thanks again, Joe, for your, donating your time and coming on the show. I really appreciate it. So holy shit, guys. Episode 27. I've had 27 of these so far. And we are 3 episodes away from the season finale. 30 episodes. I figure it's a good number. 30 weeks, basically. I know I doubled up a couple of times, but, now that I've gotten the hang of the show, I know that we're going to aim for 30-week seasons. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe on YouTube and or Apple Podcasts. Leave me that review so I can keep doing what I'm doing and get more ears and eyeballs checking out the podcast. Stay tuned for more Mind the Hang. Check out those the new series at Black Rock Social House. Keep supporting Altele Florian and 3 Sheets. And become a Patreon. How many times do I got to say it, right? Anyway, thank you so much. I'm out of here. Next week, local hometown hero. So check it out. This has been Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DeMaria. This is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground, and I'll see you at the next episode. Thanks so much. Take care.